Welcome back to Heart of the Abyss. Today we're building the exterior of a towering prison, overlooking a dangerous coastline. A place that once welcomed weary travelers, but now ensures none of them ever leave. To build up the volume and height of the landscape, I cut several pieces of styrofoam to shape and glued them onto the back of the base. These form the core of the terrain. Once the glue had dried, I used a hot rod tool to carve the foam into the right shape, creating a gradual downward slope before sanding away the harder uneven sections. For the cliff face itself, I switched over to pear installation foam. It's one of my most favorite materials to work with, because it's incredibly easy to carve while still holding crisp details. After gluing it to the front of the build, I roughened out the towering cliff face, before gradually refining it with deep erosion lines, fractured rocks, and several sea caves carved into the stone. Together, these details help capture centuries of relentless waves crashing against the base of the cliffs. It also creates an unbelievable amount of fine dust, so I keep a vacuum running beside me throughout the entire process. Keep the workshop from disappearing beneath it. Before moving on, all of the exposed foam needed to be sealed. I covered the terrain with 3 coats of Mod Podge mixed with black paint. The first coat was thinned down so it could flow into every crack and crevice, while the remaining coats created a durable protective shell over the foam. To make the water surrounding the tower feel more dangerous, I started by removing several plaster rocks from my woodland scenic rock molds. I've been using these molds for years, and they're still one of my favorite ways to create realistic rock formations. I then glued them into the sea around the base of the cliff, creating the jagged reefs that would eventually claim the shipwrecks scattered throughout the sea. With the landscape finally taking shape, it was time to begin building the centerpiece of the entire diorama, the tower itself. Rather than cutting into fresh sheets of foam, I glued together several pieces of spare XPS foam. Using a guide from Shifting Lens together with my hot wire cutter, I cut each block into an octagon. 4 sections of different sizes would eventually be stacked together to form the tower's overall shape. With the basic shape of the tower complete, I cut the doorway from a piece of foam board, along with a single decorative arch that would frame the entrance. With the doorway finished, I cut the remaining pieces of XPS foam. These would become the corner pillars and other structural details that give each section of the tower more depth. With all of the pieces cut, assembly could finally begin. I started by gluing the corner pillars onto each section of the tower. Give the base a stronger, more imposing appearance. The lowest level received much thicker support than the sections above. With those in place, I added the remaining foam details along with the foam wall doorway, and the overall design of the tower really began to come together. While the glue was drying, I quickly gave the cliffs a genital highlight. This helps to find the different rock faces and makes the painting process much easier later on. Back to the tower, I continued refining the architecture. Horizontal beams were added first, dividing each section into separate levels 4 vertical pillars tied everything together. Finally, I finished each section with decorative stone trim around the top, completing the silhouette of the tower. With all 4 sections complete, I could finally stack them together and see the tower standing at its full height. To finish the exterior, I printed several Gothic windows and glued them into place throughout the tower. The relatively small details, but they completely changed the feel of the structure. With the tower complete, it was time to tie everything together. I spread a sculpting paste made from plaster, Mod Podge and brown paint across the top of the terrain. Besides creating a durable surface, it also gave me plenty of time to sculpt additional rock formations and blend the tower naturally into the surrounding cliffs. The tower itself received a coat of Mod Podge mixed with black paint to strengthen the foam before painting. Painting the rocks is surprisingly simple. I started by applying heavily diluted yellow paint in random areas, before gradually building up several thin layers of browns, greens and greys. Rather than covering everything evenly, these transparent washes created a far more natural color variation across the cliff face. Once everything had dried, a light grey dry brush helped bring out the carved details. But while the cliffs were beginning to show the passing of time, the tower itself had a far darker story to tell. The Kingdom of Eldred reached its breaking point. Cities were overcrowded, food had become scarce, and plague spread through the land. As hope faded, the church offered its people a new beginning. Across the sea lay a newly discovered land. A 3 settlements had been established among the ruins of ancient civilizations. Each year, a chosen number of people were given the chance to leave everything behind and begin a new life. But not every ship reached its destination. As one fleet sailed toward the southernmost settlement, a thick fog rolled across the sea, swallowing the ships one by one. The captains pressed onward. Hours passed. The fog only grew thicker. Then, a crimson light appeared high above the mist. A beacon, a guide. Lee turned toward it. As the fog began to clear, a colossal tower emerged from the cliffs. Then the light vanished. A deafening crack echoed across the sea. Hidden reefs tore through the hulls, and ship after ship shattered against the rocks. The sea swallowed those who fell, but not everyone died. When you awoke, you found yourself trapped inside a metal cage, surrounded by other survivors. Something was carrying you. As the tower grew larger with every step, you realized the shipwrecks had never been an accident. It had been a harvest. To bring the sea to life, I used Liquitex Super Heavy Gloss Gel. I spread generous amounts across the base before shaping it with a spatula and an old brush. The brush naturally pulled the gel into rolling waves, while extra gel around the rocks created the crashing surface I was looking for. Before the gel had a chance to cure, I carefully pressed each shipwreck into place, making them feel as though they have been trapped beneath the reefs for years. Looking over the finished scene, the terrain still felt just a little too empty. A small cluster of trees along the back helped frame the tower without drawing attention away from it. With that done, all that remained was painting the edges black. And now, finished product.